Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Darlene, and today I want to show you this cover that I made for my brother 1034 Serger. I just purchased my Serger and I needed to protect it, and I really wanted a mat to go on my sewing table with an apron that falls over the side, but I also wanted a cover that would fully protect it. I did see a lot of YouTube videos, and I saw some where people had a mat that they then put over the machine and just tied it on the side. And I thought about doing that, but I thought I wanted something that would protect the machine more fully if I was not going to use it for an extended period of time. So I thought about it, and this is what I created. And let me show you what I have here. So this is the front of the cover that then would fall over the desk. So when I take it off the machine, what I did was, of course, I measured the dimensions of my machine so that I could cut my material accordingly and have it fit correctly. But on the side, I added these snaps on the cover, and I just put little flaps on it, and I added cam snaps so that the sides would fold away, so that when I open the cover, what I can do is I can put the apron part around where I'm going to sew, and then the back, I can just fold the sides in, and then bring my machine over and set it on and be ready to sew. And then, of course, when I'm done sewing, I can snap it back together and have the cover protecting my machine again. So I thought what I would do is, if you're interested, I will show you how I made this. So these are the materials that we're going to use for the main body of the cover. This will be the outer material, the batting in the middle, and the backing material. And we're going to quilt these and layer these once we're done cutting. We'll layer and quilt them. So from each of these three fabrics, I need you to cut one 13 by 35 inch piece and two 12.5 by 13 inch pieces. And once we get the 12.5 by 13 inch pieces cut, I will show you how we are then going to shape them to the size of the 1034D serger so that the side is more fitted. So if you're using a print that has a directional print on it, you want to make sure that when you're cutting it in such a way so that when the cover is on the machine, the print is in the right direction. You don't want your print upside down, so just be aware of that as you're cutting it. Let me show you how I cut my sides. The side pieces are 12.5 inches by 13 inches. So what I did was, once I cut it, then I just measured over 8 inches from this side and 5.5 inches up from this side, and I marked it with a pen. Then I took my cutting ruler and my rotary cutter, I lined it up on those marks, and I just cut it with the rotary cutter. And now I have the shape that I need for the sides of the cover. Okay, so I have my three main pieces. This is my 13 by 35 inch piece. As you can see, I've already clipped it together, but all it is it's just the upper piece, the batting in the middle, and the backer. And I'm just pinning them because I'm going to quilt them on the machine. And so that's the main part, and then I have two of the side. For the front pockets, we're going to need a piece of material that is 13 inches by 12 inches. We are also going to need a piece of interfacing that is 13 inches by 6 inches. And we're going to need a piece of coordinating fabric that is 2.5 inches by 13 inches. And we're going to use this for the binding at the top of the pocket. So let's take these to the iron and I'll show you what we're going to do with these. So for the pocket, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over, and on the 13-inch side, I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm just going to press it. Then I'm going to unfold it, and I'm just going to add my fusible interfacing to one side. I don't get too crazy with this, and we can trim it up later if we need to. I'm just going to press that on. And then I'm going to fold this back over and just give that another press so that I make sure that it's nice crisp edges. Which is not that big of a deal because I'm also going to put the binding on. It's going to go across this top here, so that's going to go on there. So then with the binding, what I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to fold it in half, wrong sides together, and I'm just going to press that binding and make a binding strip. And then we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew this binding to the top. We're going to roll it over, and then what we're going to have is we're going to have a trim along the top of the pockets. we have sewn the pocket piece. We put the interfacing in, remember, and then we put the binding across the top. Now we're going to take this piece and we're going to attach it to the front of the 35 by 13 inch piece of quilted material. I'm going to take my measuring tool and I am going to put it on here, and I'm going to figure out where I want my pockets to be. So I just want kind of a thin one along this line, maybe to just put a piece of a pencil or thin little things in. So I'm going to just line this up. Make sure I'm lined up here. And I'm just going to take my Frixion pen. I'm going to mark that where I'm going to sew. Then I think I want probably about this, maybe kind of two equidistant. I'm not too picky about this when I do this, so that looks about right. So I'm just going to do that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of just clip this in place with the bottom. Make sure we're kind of even here. And I'm just going to bring it to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew straight down these two lines. I'm going to sew past right to the edge of the binding, backstitch a little bit. Then I'm going to do the other stitch line. And again, just past the edge of the binding, backstitch. And there, so that part is done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of the binding and I'm just going to sew it onto the back of the cover on this end and also on this end. So I'm going to finish the binding on both ends of the 35 by 13 inch piece. I'm only going to clip it a little bit because I'm going to pull this a little bit as I sew it. 1/4 inch, seam allowance. Just going to trim that off. And then I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm also going to put the binding on this side as well. Just trim off some extra. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the binding, I'm going to bring it up and around, and I'm going to stitch down this side. I just like the look of it, stitch down. So you could hand stitch it if you want to, if you don't want to see the stitching line, but I like the stitching line. So I'm just going to fold it over, probably put a few clips on it. Let's get these threads out of here. And this is just going to finish this raw edge. So I'm going to Just throw some clips on there just to kind of hold it. These clips are fabulous, by the way. I just ordered them on Amazon, and I was going to get them at Joann Fabric, the Wonder Clips, but with everything going on, they're not in stock at my local store, and I found these for, I think I got 100 of them for about less than $10, so, and I'm pretty happy with them. Scantly stitch this binding down on the edge. So there we go. Just trim that edge. So now we just have the edges stitched down, and I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. I have sewn the pockets on. Let me trim this thread. Right there and right there. I've sewn the pockets on. I've put the binding on both edges of the cover. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to iron this because I used the Frixion pen to draw the lines. So I'm just going to iron this to get rid of, because that Frixion pen will disappear with heat. So I'm just going to iron that and get rid of those marks on the front of the cover. There we go. And I also just stitched down a very narrow stitching line on the edge so that when I put the other binding around the edge, I just wanted this pocket to be stitched down. So there we go. We've got the pockets. I can put scissors or, again, a smaller pocket for pen or whatnot. And then I have another pocket over here. So now I'm going to show you what we're doing with the sides. So I've already completed one of the sides, so I'll show you it put together, and then we will go through it. So here's one of the sides. So what I did was I took the side, this is the 12.5 by 13-inch piece, and I just quilted straight lines down the sides, and I put the binding around all of these sides. I sewed it all the way around, but before I did that, I put the flaps for the cam snaps on the back. So this piece is done, so we're going to work on this piece here. So on the back of it, I put the pieces, the flaps for the snaps, and then I've taken the binding and I've wrapped it around on the corners. I put it on, and then I fold it back in a 90-degree angle, fold it over, put the clip there, and then I fold it back that way. I don't want to sew through that line, so when I'm sewing, I'm going to have to be very careful here so that I don't stitch over that line, because when I fold it over, I want it to have a nice clean look like this when I fold it back over. So let's go, and we're going to stitch all the way around here, and then we're going to turn it over, and again, I'm going to top stitch the binding around here on the right side. I just like the way that looks. So when I finish with this, we will have two pieces for the sides, one for this side and one for this side of the cover. So let's start sewing this around. Again, I'm just going to sew the binding on with a 1/4-inch seam allowance all the way around the cover. And when I put this on, I kind of pin it, but I also pull the binding a little bit as I'm sewing it on. It just keeps it from getting bunched up with the quilting. So I kind of pin it in place to have an idea, but things change a little bit. So when I get to the corner, I'm going to sew it down to about 1/4 inch. Then I'm going to leave the needle in, and I'm just going to fold it back turn it, want it folded back. There we go. So it's straight along this side, and then I'm going to start sewing down again the other side. And again, I just take the pins out as I go along, because it's, while I pin it in place, it just doesn't quite work perfect. So when I get to this corner, again, I'm going to go a little bit, I'm going to lift the needle, and I'm just going to twist the material, not sharply like I did, you know, on a 90-degree angle like I did on this one. Just a little bit, because it's a slight curve, and I'm just going to pull a little bit more here. One more stitch there. There we go. And then I'm going to turn it and start sewing down the other edge. So let me show you here, because I don't think I showed you this before. Sorry, this is my first tutorial. So as I'm going along, what I did with these pieces is, these are just the flaps that I sewed. We're going to line all the raw edges of this up with the raw edge of the piece, and then the raw edge of the binding. And then we're sewing them all together. So again, when I come to this corner, it's not really a true corner, but I'm just going to manipulate the material so that it turns back on itself. Put the foot back down, and then start sewing again. Again, making sure that all the raw edges of the piece, the flap, and the binding are all lined up. So you can see when I got to the end here, I actually have a piece left over that I didn't plan on having. So that's why, while I pin it, I pull it a little bit and stretch it, so there's a little left over. So I'm just going to cut that off there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over just like I did on this piece. And I'm just going to top stitch the binding down all the way around. So when I'm done with that, I'll be back. Okay, so now we have the main part completed, and we have two side pieces. So now we need to put these together. So what we want to do, and this is very important, is we want to make sure that we're sewing it together the right way. So this is the front of our machine. So what I do is I kind of stand it up, because our pockets are directional, right? So this is the slanted edge is the front of the machine. So we want to make sure that this piece goes on this side and that this piece goes on this side. But what we're doing is we're going to sew these pieces, this raw edge, to the back of the machine. Okay? So when you have the back of the machine, you're going to take one piece and then the other side piece. So the back of the machine is laying with the inside up. You're going to take this side that we just figured out goes on this side. And what we're going to do, and then this side of course is going to go on this side, but we're going to take our binding strip and we are going to bind all the way from this edge all the way up to the bottom of this edge. So what we're going to do when we do this, we need some overlap on the sides of this piece so that when we get to the edge we can finish it and have it look nice, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. So I'm just going to leave some overhang there. So we're going to take the back. So I'm just going to take this, doesn't really matter I guess. Make sure the edges are lined up, the raw edges of the binding, and I'm just going to clip this in place down this whole side. Then I'm going to put this piece on, and I'm going to clip the binding down this whole side, and again I'm going to sew it and I'm going to top stitch it. So when I'm done with that, I'll be back. So let me show you how we're going to get a nice clean edge on the end of the cover, kind of like this is. I've sewn all the way down, and we're ready now to flip it over and sew this side down. So what I'm going to do is I want the tail to be about the same width as the other binding piece. Let me grab my scissors there. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. So I'm going to trim that off there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold that over. I'm going to fold it up. And then on this end, I just kind of like to bring that in a little bit so it's not quite at the edge. And then I'm going to fold this over. I'm going to clip that in place so that then when I top stitch it, I have a nice clean edge on here. I'll be back. Okay, so I've sewn this side of the binding on, and I finished the edges here. So let me show you how I'm going to do that on the other side. I've sewed the binding on to this side, and now I'm ready to flip it over to the correct side. So we want the finished side here to look nice. So what I'm going to do is I trimmed it down, and then what I'm going to do on this edge is I'm going to fold this up like that. And I kind of just give it a little, because I want this to be down, and then I'm going to fold that over, and I am going to clip that so it stays in place. Then when I sew it, I'm going to sew it along that line, and that's going to give it a nice finished edge on the bottom. And then you could hand stitch the bottom if you want to. I'm not going to. I don't have a problem with that. It's not going to get a lot of use. So then I'm going to stitch that all the way back up, and we will be done with the cover except for the cam snaps. So I'll see you in just a minute. We've got everything sewn together. There's the front of the machine. Here's the left or right side flap, whichever way you're looking at it. Here's the other flap on the other side. So now what we need to do is we need to put the snaps on the flaps and on the cover, line them up. So what I like to do is I want to line up the front sides, and I just use clips to hold this because we need to fit it a little bit. And I'm going to come here. So on the top, I kind of square that off and kind of put that on like that because it's going to be underneath there. And when I come to this corner, again, I'm just going to kind of square it off a little bit like that. And this front corner is just a little bit more ease, so I don't do a whole lot with that front part there. So that's how I'm going to fit it. Then on the inside, where the flaps are, once it's fitted together like that, we have the flaps on the inside. So we can mark where we want the snaps to go. I ordered these Linda snaps off of Amazon. I have a ton of them. What I'm going to go through is I'm going to make sure that I have enough of the pink, the fronts and the backs. I'm probably going to do 2 snaps on each flap. So I'm going to go through and sort those out. And then what I just lay this down. I'm going to mark where these go. And then we will get the snaps on, and then we will repeat on the other side. So let me get the snaps picked out, and then I will show you how I mark it and put them on. So I've picked out the caps, the snaps, and for each snap you need two caps and a male and a female part. So you can see that on the right there, those are the male parts, and on the left are the female parts. So let's get those onto the cover, and we'll see how this is all going to work out. Let me show you how this is going to work. When we are adding the snaps, we want to make sure that the side is up. So there's the bottom, there's the front cover, here's the side. So the flaps are attached to the side, so you want to make sure that the side is up, and then we're going to mark where we want the snaps to go. So I'm just going to eyeball it on this one. So say I want, sorry, let me get this maybe lined up like this is a little bit better. So kind of equal distance. I don't go crazy with these. I say we're going to put one there, and we're going to put one there, okay? So those are marked. So now we're going to take, this is an awl, and this is the crimper that comes with the snaps. So we're going to put that all down through, and we're going to push it all the way through the material, all the way to the front, and push it all the way through like that. And then when I pull that out, I'm just going to mark that, just kind of mark that with the marker just so I can see that. So there's with that one, and then we're going to do the same thing with the other one. It's going to go all the way through the material, all the way to the front. So then we can pull that out. Again, I'm going to just mark that with that marker. So now on the front of the cover, when we turn that over, we can see the holes there. So we're going to take one of the caps, and there's a sharp point on the caps. We're going to push it through that hole. And I'm going to unclip these at this point. So you can see I'm going to push it through and just kind of tight, but I want to push it all the way through. And I like to push that material down around because I want it fully down along that point. And it takes a little bit of muscling to do. There we go. So you can see that's pushed all the way down. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. Might need to put the awl back through again just to make the hole a little easier to push it through. And that snap is going to go in there. And again, I'm going to muscle that down on there. That one came out a little bit, so all right, I'm going to lay this flat. And those are on there. Push that down. So now we have to decide whether we want the male part on the top or the female part on the top. And I think I'm going to put the male part on the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit of fabric glue, and I'm just going to put a dot of it on here because I just want it to, I don't want the fabric to fray. Those caps are going to go on there like that. We're going to use the tool. We're going to seat the cap into the underneath part. We're going to put this on there, and then we're just going to crimp it down. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. Make sure that that is lined up under there, and I'm just going to crimp it down. So that, we have the snaps on the front. That's the male part. Now we have to put the snaps on the bottom. So for the bottom, these snaps are going to go in there. So the cap for the bottom is going to go underneath here. So that's going to go under. This is a little easier to push through because it's just a thin piece of fabric, no quilting. But again, I'm still going to put a little dab of fabric glue on those because I just don't want it to unravel as it pulls. So then on this side, I'm going to take the female piece and put that on there. And we're going to crimp the female piece on. I'm going to sit that into the bottom there. And we're going to crimp the female piece. And there's our snaps. So now we can snap our cover together. There we go. And we're going to do this for all sides. We're going to just put the snaps on. So what I did, so that I got all the snaps on that side. So to get them to line up with the front of the cover on the other side, what I did was I lined up the edges. Then I took a marking pen and I just folded it back. I marked the very top of the snaps that were already there, folded it down, pressed them onto it, and so what it did was it left a little mark, and then I just added a dot right in the center of those little marks, and that's where I'm going to push the awl through. When I get these on, I will snap the cover on, and then I will mark it to put the snaps on the inside of these flaps so that everything lines up correctly. Okay, so I've got all the snaps on both sides, so now I need to put the snaps on these flaps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit the cover again, like I showed you previously. Then I'm going to open these up, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to mark. Well, with these, honestly, this material is thin enough so I can just mark the center of those dots so that they are lined up. Just going to feel and mark it. Again, there's the snaps. I'm just pushing the cover down over it to line it up. I'm going to feel for the snap, and I'm going to put a dot right in the center of the snap. Then I can unclip it. We have our dots. Push the awl through. We're going to put our snaps on the flaps. When I get these all done, we'll fit our cover to our 1034D serger, and we will see how it fits. Okay, so we have finished our 2-in-1 serger cover. So let's put it together and put it on the machine, and we'll see how it fits. So if we unfold it, we're going to take the snaps and we're just going to snap it. And again, if you wanted to, instead of putting snaps on these flaps, you could absolutely put Velcro on the flaps and along the top as well. I'd like to thank you also for coming along with me on this journey. This is my very first YouTube video and my first ever sewing tutorial. I hope I didn't miss any steps, but if I did, just ask me questions in the comments below and I will answer what I can for you. So we're going to put this over the front of the serger. We can snap these sides. On my original cover, I used a foam batting rather than the cotton batting that I used for this. I think I like the foam batting a little bit better because it's a little sturdier, but with everything going on right now, I couldn't get any of the foam batting at my local Joann Fabric or Walmart, so I used the cotton batting. It's okay. The other one's just a little bit firmer. So it fits the cover well. Again, you can put different things into the pockets, and then when we're ready then to use it as a sewing mat, we can just unsnap the cover. We can take it off the machine. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you would hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I'm hoping to bring you other videos for things that might be helpful to you. We're going to take the back. We're just going to fold in the flaps, flip it over. The apron falls down over the side. And then we're going to take our serger and sit it on our mat, and we're ready to sew. Again, thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Have a wonderful day.